Nike built one of the greatest sneaker lines in history for a player who barely got to wear it. Penny Hardaway was supposed to be the next Michael Jordan. In 1995, he knocked Jordan's Bulls out of the playoffs. He had the shoes, the commercials, the whole machine behind him. Then his knee went. And by 27, his last signature shoe had already come and gone. 4 shoes, that's the entire NBA career. The line has been releasing for 30 years since. An entire industry of retros, hybrids, and anniversary drops he never played a single game in. And the shoe you picture when you hear his name? It doesn't even have his name on it. It was built for somebody else, and that somebody else turned it down. These are the Penny sneakers Penny never wore, and the strange story of why they got bigger than his career, the one everyone gets wrong. Nike Air Foamposite 1, 1997. Start with the famous one. Ask anyone to name a Penny Hardaway shoe and they'll say Foamposite before you finish the question. The molded shell, the alien shape, one of the most recognizable basketball sneakers ever built. Start with the obvious. It isn't called a penny. The Air Foamposite 1 doesn't carry his name the way the Air Max Penny does. It carries his 1-cent logo, but the shoe itself was never named for him because it was never designed for him. It was designed for Scottie Pippen. Pippen turned it down. Didn't want it. And think about what that meant at the time. Nike had spent an unprecedented amount developing a process nobody in footwear had attempted. Liquid polyurethane poured into a mold, forming a single seamless shell with no stitched panels at all. Designed by Eric Avar. A shoe that looked less like a sneaker than like something with an exoskeleton, and cost a fortune to produce. Nike had built the most radical basketball shoe of the decade, and the athlete it was made for said no. So it sat. And Penny, who by his own account was unimpressed with what he'd been shown for his own neck signature, spotted it in a bag. He asked what it was. The most iconic sneaker of Penny Hardaway's career came to him as a hand-me-down from a man who didn't want it. It gets stranger. Penny wasn't even the first person to play in them. That honor goes to a college kid, Mike Bibby, wearing Foamposites during Arizona's run to the NCAA championship in March 1997, before Penny ever laced them in an NBA game. And when Penny finally did debut them, in the 1997 playoffs against Miami, the shoe didn't comply with the NBA's uniform rules. The league required shoes to match the team. The Foamposite, in that dark neon royal, did not. So Michael Jordan's heir apparent sat with a Sharpie and colored black lines onto his own signature sneaker to make it legal to play in. He was worth it. Those Miami games are the defining performances of his career. Back-to-back 40-point nights, the Foamposites on his feet, a 25-year-old at the absolute peak of his powers. That's the version of Penny Hardaway the world remembers. That's the version every retro of this shoe is selling. It lasted about 7 months. Because in November 1997, his knee gave out. Was already sitting on a production line, about to be released to a player who wouldn't be there to wear it. The true ghost. Air Penny 3, 1997. If the Foamposite is the shoe everyone gets wrong, the Air Penny 3 is the shoe nobody got at all. It arrived in 1997 carrying real ambition, the first time Foamposite material came into the Penny line proper, a mix of molded shell and leather that looked like nothing else on a basketball court. His own teammates gave him grief about it, calling the shoes alien, otherworldly. Which was the point. Nike was building the visual language of a player they expected to define the next decade. Then Penny sat out 63 games, 63 out of 82. A torn meniscus in his left knee at 26 years old, in the exact season his third signature shoe was supposed to live on national television. The Air Penny 3 released into an empty space where a superstar's season should have been, and that injury didn't resolve. Repeated surgeries, limited minutes. Then the trade to Phoenix in 1999, then the Knicks, then Miami. Flashes of the old player kept surfacing for another decade. The handle, the vision, the occasional impossible finish. But the guard who dropped back-to-back 40-point games on Miami in the spring of 1997 was already gone by the following winter, and he was never coming back. Here's how completely the Penny 3 disappeared with him. It finally came back in 2009, and to this day it has been released roughly 9 times total, the fewest of any shoe in Penny Hardaway's signature line. Compare that to the Foamposite, which has had dozens upon dozens of colorways in the same window. Same athlete, same year. One shoe became a permanent fixture of sneaker culture, and the other basically doesn't exist. And the only variable between them is how many games he played in each. That's the whole thesis of this video sitting in one comparison. These shoes were never selling material or technology or design language. They were selling minutes of Penny Hardaway on a basketball court, and after November 1997, the supply of those ran out. If you're buying, the Penny 3 is the genuine sleeper of this entire line. It's the least re-released signature shoe he ever had. You're buying the model that got erased by a knee injury, at prices that don't reflect that story, because almost nobody has told it. The Escape, the 3 that made it. Here's where the list gets interesting, because 3 shoes with his name on them should be on it, and escaped. The Air Max Penny 1, 1995, the one that started everything. Understand the leap this represented. 2 years earlier, Penny had been a college kid at Memphis State playing in Converse. Now Nike was building him a flagship. Tensile Air in the forefoot, Max 2 Air in the heel, the 1 cent logo stamped on the heel, pinstripe tongues nodding to the Magic's uniforms. And look at how different that era was. It launched in 3 colorways. 3? Today, a signature athlete gets 30 before Christmas. There's a detail on that shoe that predicts this entire story. The wing structure on the Penny 1 was an early precursor to Foamposite technology. The seed of the shoe that would eventually swallow his whole legacy was already sitting on his first sneaker 2 years early. The Air Max Penny 2, 1996. The line at full altitude? This is the Lil Penny Era, the puppet, voiced by Chris Rock, running commercials funnier than anything else on television. Penny used to joke that Lil Penny was more popular than he was, and he was maybe half joking. And the on-court resume backed all of it. He and Shaq had already knocked Michael Jordan's Bulls out of the playoffs in 1995. Jordan's comeback season, the number 45 series, ended by a second-year guard from Memphis. 4 All-Star teams. 2 All-NBA first teams. Olympic gold in Atlanta in '96, 6'7", 195 pounds. Nobody had a word for what he was because the position hadn't been invented yet. There was no reason on earth to think this line wouldn't run for 15 years the way Jordan's had. The Penny 3 came next, in 1997, and you already know what happened to it. The Air Max Penny 4, 1998. More support, more refinement, and it arrived to a player who had just missed 63 games. He was still in Orlando, still trying to rebuild, and the shoe released into the wreckage of the season that ended his prime. The following year, he'd be traded to Phoenix, paired with Jason Kidd in a backcourt that was supposed to be the next great partnership and became one of the biggest what-ifs of the era. The 4 sold into 2000, got a one-off cool gray release in 2002, and then it was over. The Air Max Penny 4 was the last signature shoe released during Penny Hardaway's NBA career. He was 27 years old. Nike retroed it once in 2006, and then the original molds were destroyed. If you're buying, this is the one with a hard ceiling on supply. Nike retroed it once and then destroyed the molds, which means every true Penny 4 that exists already exists. Check the midsole first. 20-plus-year-old foam doesn't forgive. Condition is most of the value. And there would not be another Penny signature model for 14 years. 14 years between a man's last 2 signature sneakers. Not because the shoes stopped selling, because the career that justified them stopped producing reasons to make new ones. But something else happened in those years, and nobody appreciated it at the time. It's the key to this entire video. Penny never stopped being asked about his shoes. Interviews, retro announcements, colorway decisions. Nike kept coming back to him about a line he could no longer play in. And he kept saying yes. Hold on to that. It's the ending of this video. The forever list. Because after 2008, when Penny Hardaway finally retired, the list stops growing 1 injury at a time and starts growing automatically. Forever. Every Penny sneaker from that point on was released with 0 chance of ever touching an NBA floor on his feet. Run the list. The models he never touched. The Air Penny 5 arrived in 2012, 14 years after the 4, a full signature basketball shoe designed for a man who'd already retired. And it wasn't even the first dot before it came the half-cent, the Zoom rookie, the Lil Penny Posit. His DNA recombined into new configurations, the way you'd remix a song whose artist stopped recording. Then in 2014, Air Penny 6, designed by Mark Dolce. Sneaker News put it plainly. Penny Hardaway is, without question, the most successful post-retirement signature athlete in the game. When Penny debuted the 6 himself, he wasn't playing in it. He was spotted wearing an unreleased colorway during conditioning work. A middle school coach in Memphis, breaking in his own 6th signature shoe on his own time. And then Nike did something that tells you everything about how this works. They released a Penny Sharpie pack, a product built around the memory of a 25-year-old coloring in his own sneakers with a marker so the league would let him play. The improvised fix from one night in 1997 became a retail concept. Take a moment the man lived through once and sell it back forever. And then the Foamposite era, which is the real story. In 1997, the Air Foamposite 1 released in exactly one colorway, the dark neon royal that collectors now just call the Penny. It took roughly a decade before Nike brought it back, returning in 2008 as a House of Hoops exclusive, essentially a reissue of that original royal. And then the floodgates opened and never closed. Dozens upon dozens of colorways, year after year, one of the most relentlessly re-released silhouettes in Nike's entire catalog. Colorways tied to cities, to holidays, to nothing at all. Penny played in one version of that shoe. The world got 100. And here's the one that lands hardest. Years after his career ended, an interviewer asked Penny what colorway he'd want to see. He didn't hesitate. Copper, like a penny. Nike built it. The copper Foamposite is now one of the most beloved versions of the shoe ever made. He picked the color. He inspired the name. He never played a single NBA game in it. If you're buying, understand what you're actually choosing between. The OG Royal is the one with the story. One colorway, 1997, the shoe he played in. Everything after it is a colorway, not a chapter. If you want the Penny history, buy the Royal or the copper he picked himself. If you just want Foamposites, the market is enormous and the prices are reasonable, precisely because Nike never stopped making them. That's the forever list in one pair of shoes. Penny Hardaway, still designing sneakers for a version of himself that a knee injury took away in 1997. So count it, 4 signature shoes in an NBA career, 30 years of releases, 2 flagship models after he retired, 100+ Foamposite colorways he never played in, and a line that still moves product today for a man who last mattered on a basketball court when most of its customers were children or weren't born. Here's what makes Penny Hardaway different from every other signature athlete in sneakers. When you buy a Jordan, you're buying a career that finished. 6 rings, the shot, the flu game, the last shot, a complete story with an ending. When you buy a Kobe, same thing. 20 years, 5 titles, an argument that got fully made and fully won. When you buy a Penny, you're buying a career that got interrupted. 2 seasons of the most exciting guard alive, back-to-back 40-point games in a pair of shoes he had to color in with a marker to be allowed to wear, and then a knee that took the vote away from him at 26 years old. That's why the Foamposite never dies. It isn't nostalgia for a champion. It's nostalgia for a maybe, for the version of Penny Hardaway that existed for about 30 months in the mid-90s, before his body stopped cashing the checks his talent wrote. Every retro is a small rumor about the player he was going to be, pressed into polyurethane and sold to people who want to believe the 90s could have gone differently. And here's the ending I told you to hold on to. Penny went back to Memphis, the school where it all started, and took over as head coach, which means he spent his days on a court, running a program, coaching teenagers who were not alive for a single one of those 4 shoes. Some of them wear his Foamposites. They bought them at retail. He earned them with a career he never got to finish. Penny Hardaway wore 4 of his shoes in the NBA. The other 30 years belonged to everyone else.